Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg, and today we have politics with us. And how are you doing today?
Really good, Willie, man. It's good to see you. I think the last time we did this was before Trump got elected. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
yep. Things kind of yeah. Well, things were different yet the same. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
couldn't agree more. I was
yeah.
thinking about that today because I have a lot of relatives who are like really upset that Kamala lost, and I'm just like, nothing has changed really. I mean,
Nothing's changed since Ronald Reagan.
yeah.
This is the 12th term of Ronald Reagan. I don't expect to see anything. Well, there are going to be some. Well, even when they're all the same, they do provide their own version of bullshit. Every one of them that they have to
True.
go and subject us all to. I've often said that I hate any sitting presidents at the Oval Office at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that I think really gets me is just how controlled our government is by foreign countries, and that's the one thing that hasn't changed at all with the administrations changing.
Yeah. We have. I mean, and we never had money for problems at home that we have. But my God, they can cough up money for Zelensky, and they can cough up money for Netanyahu, just like that. I mean, the money is there.
Yep.
But and
Which is
and
proof they have it.
yeah, and it's not even that. It's not even to build things elsewhere. It's to destroy people's lives and destroy societies. I mean, our money goes to bombs. And it's really sad. It's just really sad how people what the priorities are in terms of U.S. foreign policy and all of that. So, yeah,
Terrible.
well, let's hope to see a resurgent anti-war movement. Hopefully, since maybe the shit lives will become anti-war again.
That's the one. So, I don't know. Like, my whole take with the election was, look, I didn't vote, but I hoped Trump won for that reason. And I see it happening already. When I wake up in the morning, I'll get on Twitter and I'll just like be in bed. Like, it's probably unhealthy that that's the first thing I do, but I'll wake up and start scrolling through Twitter. And this morning, there was a lady who was basically, I don't even remember who it was, but she was lambasting people for, all you guys that voted against genocide, I hope you're happy now. And my response was like, yeah, I am happy now, because at least you have to pretend to give a shit about it now that it's not a Democrat at the helm. So
Yeah, and I expected it to have a lot of people canceling me out like they did in 2016 with my vote for Jill Stein. And people have to understand that I just naturally vote third party for president. I have been voting third party for president for almost 30 years now, and
everyone should.
yeah, and I vote 100% outside the two party system now. At one time I was a quote unquote part time Democrat, still voting third party, but and to each is their own. I'm not going to sit there and tell people. People can decide what to do as far as what they think is necessary for, to get things done, or harm if they feel good about harm reduction. I never believed in harm reduction because harm reduction basically translates into just keeping the present harm that there is right now, and usually that harm gets worse, because we certainly haven't gone further left in our society. We seem to be traveling further and further to the right, and Bernie was our hope for things. And I am so disillusioned with Bernie these days.
Terrible.
Yeah, I have an unusual spin on Bernie. I don't I don't shit on Bernie like maybe some people that we will all know in our circles. However, I am disillusioned with Bernie, and I don't think he was trying to sheep herd people into the Democratic Party, but the cause and effect, that's what's happening, and
That makes sense. So you don't think he was intentionally doing that? It's just kind of what happened.
It's kind of what happened.
Yeah,
and
I can agree with that.
I think he's trying to remain relevant, but he should just, to me, I just think Bernie should just shut the fuck up and just serve the rest of his term and then retire like he indicates he's going to do in 2030.
It's the thing, what he's doing now bothers me because it's so disingenuous. You know what I mean? Like the way that the Democrats are trying to sell him now, after they completely stomped our movement the first two times, is what really disgusts me, because it's very clearly disingenuous what he's doing. It's like, oh, the oligarchy. It's like, bro, JB Pritzker spoke at the DNC, and now all of a sudden you have something about the oligarchy. Yeah, okay, whatever. It's very disingenuous, and I don't think Bernie has like nefarious motivations. You know, I don't think he's a bad person at his core, but I think he's being used right now because yeah. What else do the Democrats have at this point? I mean, and now they're gonna now they're like, oh, now Bernie's cool. Now all the people who, I mean, you remember it, man. I was called a misogynist. I was deplatformed from Twitter for saying something to Chris Matthews when Bernie won. You know, I have a lot of built up resentment from that era still.
Well, let me tell you. I was very unhinged about this time 5 years ago, as I saw him. I saw him getting. I saw the attempts to derail him in 2020. I saw it right there. And some people saying, "Oh, you're worrying way too much." Look, he's done well in the primary so far in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and look how he blew everybody away in Nevada and everything. I say, yeah, watch out. They're up to no good. They are up to no good. Well, and Obama made those phone calls, and he knew he was fucked right away.
But also, the thing that's so frustrating about that is it was very clear where the energy was. You know, no one else was filling stadiums full of excited people at that time. No one. And I mean, they just triangulated against him in a way that, you know, I don't even believe that it was legitimate. You know, I really don't. I think they cheated him in 2020 again, like they did in 2016. They attempted to, I mean, remember the caucus when they tried to, luckily that time we had people on the ground in Iowa who were counting the votes manually at the caucus, but they tried with that app and everything. They tried to put Buttigieg over. They tried to cheat right out of the gate. And it was all, the app was all built by Hillary Clinton acolytes and people from that campaign. And I think when you saw Biden come in and the people, you know, it was very clear Biden didn't control anything, but the people who ran his administration were the people that were supposed to comfortably take over from the Obama era, right?
Yeah, I mean, they took a brain dead vegetable like Biden coming out of nowhere. There's no way in hell that Biden, you know, they just love Biden. It was just that they were trying to, you know, Bernie was kind of a threat at that time. At that time, he was a threat. And you know, in Iowa, I'm gonna tell you, in Iowa, here's the thing. If you hated Bernie, no matter who you supported, you thought that Pete the Cheat won. If you were for Bernie at that time, you know, you would realize he won because Pete Buttigieg was tied in with that app company that was, you know, that kind of did a number on him. So
they even ran stories after that, like he's the actual winner. Remember that? They actually ran. Yes. They ran stories where he was the victor of the, you know, the press tried to paint him as the winner and everything.
I think he is seen as the winner officially of the
Really?
Iowa caucus, but it was by a race or thin margin. And then when Bernie did well in New Hampshire, they were talking about how well Amy Klobuchar did, and she was like a distant fourth and fifth, and in the irrelevant zone. They were just talking her up a great storm. I was like, really?
Nevada, when he won Nevada, that's when I got in trouble and thrown off Twitter, because to me, that was the point where it was undeniable too. It was like they tried to shade and like obfuscate his wins in those first couple primaries, but then he won Nevada. Even after they put out all that propaganda against him. They put out that Putin wanted him to win. Do you remember the nurses? They got these nurses to come out against him in Nevada and stuff, and he still won. And I just remember MSNBC just there, like, I can't remember who the lady was, but she's like, and the winner is Bernie Sanders.
I saw how MSNBC and a network that I used to religiously watch. I used to listen to Rachel Maddow. I used to listen to Keith Olbermann. I used to listen to those motherfuckers all the time, and thought, I thought, my God, these are the truth tellers. These are the people,
Even
and
Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart, I used to watch the Daily Show. Used to think this is, and Kyle Klinsky sitting there trying to push Jon Stewart for president.
I mean, I like Jon Stewart still. It's just, all those people. That's the thing. I think the one silver lining to me of Trump winning, and I said this before the election. I said, because I didn't vote, so I went, okay, if Trump wins, it will give me some hope in that people don't listen to the media anymore. Because they were like, there's a Nazi rally. He's all this stuff at the outset of that. And he still won. So that gave me a little bit of faith. But now, with all the stuff that's going on with Israel and even with Ukraine, it's like, man, I really thought Trump would be able to kind of overcome those forces, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do it. He's going to lick those boots just like the last administration did, whether it's Ukraine or Israel, or, man, it's just, and that was the one silver lining of him. But
the reason why Trump is significantly worse than he was the first time round. The first time round, Trump, the populism that Trump had in 2016 is gone. That veneer is totally gone. He turned into.
I don't know that it's totally gone. I mean, there is stuff that they're doing that I do still think is good, but I also and not, sorry to interrupt you, but my take too is also a little bit more cynical maybe than a lot of other people in my space, in that I see who's the president who said, if you want to make some enemies, try to change something? Was it Roosevelt or FDR who said that? One of those great presidents said something like, if you really want to make enemies, try and change something. So I do see, like, there is a lot of hysteria over, like, Trump and Elon, like with Elon, for example, and the Doge stuff. That's only supposed to last for 6 months. And I remember a lot of people being like, it's going to be toothless. It's not going to matter. And it is mattering. But I do think there's a lot of hysteria around that. It's like, I'm kind of waiting for that to be proven out. If they actually do try to cut Social Security or Medicaid, I'll be right there at the picket lines with everyone else. But I still I feel like there's a lot of hysteria being generated around this administration for that reason, just to get people upset with them, even though some of the stuff they're not really quite doing yet. That's not to say that, I'm on board with everything they're doing either. The stuff with Khalil is just a red line. Like, that's, and you see a lot of even MAGA voices coming out against that. So that gives me a little bit of hope, but
Yeah, well, here's the thing. In 2016, when he got elected, I didn't suffer from what they call Trump derangement syndrome. In fact, I made fun of Russiagate, and in some ways, Trump was more moderate than the other Republicans running in that primaries. A lot of people seem to think I'm crazy when I say that. But I mean, he in some ways he was kind of moderate. He said some horrible things about immigrants, which is unforgivable. And some of those rallies were kind of violent. I saw that one man in North Carolina that one there's like a cowboy assaulting the black guy, and
but even that kind of stuff
with it.
Yeah, but even that kind of, remember they did that to Bernie too, though. They had Nazi flags at one of his rallies, and you know what I mean. They tried to paint us all as misogynists and pro-Russian.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that Trump when he was governing the first time round, and as much as I hate the establishment Republicans, and I do think the establishment Republicans on their own, they're dangerous. Trump on his own, he's dangerous. But when it was Trump and the establishment Republicans kind of, having to be forced to work together, I think they both sort of moderated on each other in a lot of ways during the first Trump presidency. This time around, he's got a lot of yes men, and I do think there's something to Project 25, and so I think it's not hyperbole to call it what it is. I mean, it is a form of fascism. Now, fascism doesn't have to mean National Socialism. I mean, it can be ultra right wing authoritarianism, but
that's problem, on that note, I think that like a lot of the right wingers conflate socialism with fascism because they say, oh, well, the Nazis were a socialist party. No, the Nazis called themselves a socialist party.
That's right.
They didn't, they might have I'm not a World War II historian. Maybe they did social stuff that was good for the people. If they did, that's one of the things they did that was probably good. But they were an authoritarian, like fascism is authoritarian. The shit that they're doing with this guy, Mahmoud Khalil, who's basically just protesting, that is flat out authoritarianism.
Exactly.
There's nothing about this. Yeah.
Not charged
by the same token, though, look at what Biden did. I mean, they killed a fucking U.S. journalist in Ukraine. No, not even a word about it. They jailed guys. Obama jailed Daniel Hale. It's not unique to Trump. It's just I'm glad that Trump's in office because since he's in office, liberals are going to be mad about it, where they would ignore it if it was a Democrat.
I see what you're saying, but as I said, I made fun of Trump derangement syndrome years ago, and some people think I am now adopting it. I do think he's okay. I can listen to Kyle Kalinske and listen to him and agree what he says. He's a little bit still a little over the top about it, but I think I don't know. I think that he's still on to something. He just think it needs to be done through the Democratic Party. He says the right things. What destroys his argument is that it can be all done inside the Democratic Party. And I'm sorry to break it to Kyle. There's not going to be another Bernie for a long time. And and it's just I don't know. I see dangerous repercussions in our society because of what's happening.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this: why, because with the establishment Republican thing, to me, it's like all the worst Republicans have sided with the Democrats now, like Mitt Romney and John Bolton and the Cheneys, and they all endorsed Kamala Harris in this cycle. So to me, there's definitely a realignment, and that goes to what I was saying about, I think there is some hysteria, and I'll oppose when it's legitimate, like the Khalil thing. I will oppose. I didn't vote for Trump, but I also I'm kind of like, what, based on the stuff that the Democrats have done for the last, under Obama was George Bush with
agreed
LGBTQ and like DEI aesthetics, and I hate using that term because I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, DEI. No,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, there was a need for that kind of those kind of policies, affirmative action, all that stuff. There's clearly like economic problems, and I lived in Los Angeles for most of my life. you can see it, but that aside, it's like the one thing I think gives me a little glimmer of hope with the Trump regime is that all the bad Republicans, not all of them, but a lot of them were against him. You still have like Tommy Tuberville and some of those dummies and Lindsey Graham who are on board with the Trump thing just because they're sucked into power. But then you have in the MAGA movement, people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith, and even like guys like Andrew Tate, who are very pro Gaza, so there's like a large portion of the MAGA movement that's dissenting against Trump being owned by Israel that I didn't like. Do you remember when the Democrats put that letter out with Ukraine and then they immediately like rescinded it?
I sure do.
Yeah. See, so I at least with the MAGA people, I feel like they have a little bit more spine on this kind of stuff. So that gives me a little bit of hope. But again, I didn't vote for it and I don't condone a lot of what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, as far as the one hope I would say the one hope I had was on Ukraine. I have said this. I said as much as I never ever want to see Trump back in the Oval Office, Ukraine was the one area where I think that he would do well. So, and I did approve of him berating Zelensky.
Yeah, that was good.
I approved. I was like, okay, I'm okay. I'm on that one. I'm with him. But I mean, just nearly everything else. I'm not. Now, you're right about the rehabilitation of some of the really horrible Republicans. I mean, like Bill Kristol, been rehabilitated to the Democrats. And listen,
David Frum.
I am happy that Bill Kristol support transgender rights. I am totally happy with that. But that's not why the Republicans hate him. They hate him because they hate him because of that. But they hate him because he went with the Democrats too these days. He used to be a Democrat. He became a Republican. He's a Democrat again.
Let me ask you what you think about my take on this, because this was from Steve Bannon, and I've covered this. You may have seen it, but Steve Bannon did a debate with David Frum in like 2016, a monk debate. Have you seen that?
I don't think I have.
Well, in that debate, it's very interesting because David Frum, the guy who wrote the Axis of Evil speech for Bush, is arguing the side of the liberal against Steve Bannon, and Steve Bannon is arguing the side of populism. And the debate starts with these people like protesting Steve Bannon as a racist and all this stuff, like hate's not allowed here and everything. And as you listen to Steve Bannon talk, you're like, wow, this guy sounds a lot more like Bernie Sanders than David Frum does. And that debate really illustrated to me the kind of realignment that was happening, where you have guys like David Frum and Bill Kristol who realize like, hey, if we want to continue our neocon project, we're going to have to evolve and be acceptable of trans rights and like the stuff that common sense, like decent people in the modern era are good with, you know what I mean? Gay rights and, civil rights and all that stuff. And you could see Steve Bannon kind of making the argument that, hey, look, populism is going to express itself one way or another, whether it's via Bernie Sanders left or whether it's via the MAGA right. And the Democrats kind of absorbed the David Frums and the Bill Kristols and stomped populism out of their party, and it took on the right. And it's like there's aspects of MAGA populism I don't agree with, and I've never considered myself MAGA, but there's also a lot that I do agree with, that like some of the stuff like that Trump has done, like taking away security clearance from John Bolton and John Brennan, and that is something I never even knew I wanted to happen, that I'm like,
yes, but MAGA still has MAGA is basically and here's the thing: a lot of liberals don't realize MAGA is not a monolith. There are factions of MAGA. You got people like Thomas Massey of Kentucky, who's awesome on foreign policy. I'm not particularly keen on his economic libertarianism domestically, and I don't know where he stands on some social issues. If where he stands is he more like a Rand Paul type,
Yeah, I
who's
think so.
kind of a conventional Republican in a lot of respects, or is he more like kind of the eccentric crank, like Vermin Supreme from the Libertarian Party,
Forgot about
one
that
with
guy.
the big old boot on top of his head and all of that. Where does he stand on the social issues? Is he just basically, we don't know, but you have that faction. You have your paleo con people like your Tucker Carlsons and
Mhm.
this whole new lane that she carved for herself, Candace Owens. That's what
Yeah.
she found that lane, and so
I think though with Candace though, the thing I like, the reason I think people like her and Joe Rogan are so popular is because they're just honest about who they are. They're not trying to be anything. And there's a ton of stuff I disagree with Candace Owens on, especially her stance on pornography. But I like her a lot.
Oh, well, and then you have the core of MAGA, who were basically, your George W. Bush, Dick Cheney types. Who did they support in 2016? A lot of them went with Rubio, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, because there was a time people thought that Trump was this secret liberal. I mean, and some of the never Trumpers actually hated Trump from the right, and that's a lot of people. Yeah,
I mean, honestly, let's be honest. The Democrats are hating Trump from the right on a lot of stuff right now. Like and to your point about Trump not being a secret liberal, I don't think that I mean, Trump is a Manhattan socialite. You know what I mean? Like that's who he is from the beginning. Like he's never been like an anti-gay or even anti-abortion guy, but I think he co-opted some of that language to pander to that wing of the Republican base, right? The religious right base.
Yeah, and that's the thing right there. The religious right, they're basically the John Hagees of the world, and all that. Those people, those motherfuckers, were Bush Cheney conservatives.
They're Zionists too.
Yeah, and Christian Zionists. I mean, and Pete Hegseth is like, he is like the epitome of the. I mean, he's like everything one can hate about John Hagee and everything one can hate about Mark Levin roll into one person,
But is he really though? I mean, like the thing about someone like Hegseth, and I'm not a fan of his or anything, but the thing I think is good about someone like him is he doesn't have a political history. So he's not like, I don't see him as being beholden to any specific. Obviously, they're all beholden to the Zionist.
Yeah,
stuff.
he does have a history. He wasn't a pro-Iraq war activist.
Was he? Okay.
Yes, he was 20 years ago. I mean, that's his claim to fame.
Well, even Rubio, it's like Rubio came around on the like, and I think with people like, and this is just my personal take, I think with people like Rubio, I think Trump chose people like him because first of all, he knows he'll get through Congress, but second of all, because he's a loyalist. Rubio was pro-Ukraine war until Trump nominated him for Secretary of Defense. And now he's like, oh, we need to wind this down. So
like for example, Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I get kind of weird when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard because she was my second choice in 2020, and we will get to the crux of what we need to talk about regarding Bernie. But this is a great way to kind of set into the audience here. But with Tulsi Gabbard, she was my second choice in 2020. I wanted her to be Bernie's running mate. And I really believed that they had a quiet arrangement when she ran in 2020. She was the one to tear down, she destroyed Kamala Harris early on.
Yeah.
And not only were they angry with her for what she did, helping Bernie in 2016, exposing, the DNC for what they did, but they also hated her for, taking down Kamala Harris as early as she did.
Yeah, that was pretty epic.
Yeah, Nico House was bragging. I think maybe close to a year ago, almost a year ago, he was bragging that there was Nico House and Fiorella Isabel that gave basically the Tulsi Gabbard the political ammunition, the talking points that actually ended her primary run. Yeah, and so as I said, watching her take down Kamala Harris, I was just like, I was like, I like this lady. But
no one liked Kamala Harris.
Hillary Clinton pushed Tulsi Gabbard to the right. The establishment Democrats, with their Russia gating her, pushed her to the right. And yeah, I think that she had a 100% voting record, positive voting record from the Human Rights Campaign while she was a member of Congress. But yeah, sure, she grew up in a homophobic environment, with her parents being very socially conservative Hindus and all of that. But wouldn't that be a lot of people as far as upbringing is concerned? I never believed in taking somebody's upbringing and holding that against them. But they pushed her into MAGA. They pushed her into the Trump movement. And
not to interrupt you, but she gets a lot of crap for kind of like molding herself to the MAGA side. But it's like, at the same time, I would rather her like kind of, squirm her way in there and get into a position of power. Because have you seen the most recent story regarding her with the guy that she appointed to DNI that Israel was like, Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I will say that of all the people that Trump appointed, she's the one that offended me the least.
Yeah. Well, so I literally just watched, because for me too, just to kind of preface this, the people that I trust the most in the news space are people like Glenn Greenwald, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Matei,
me too.
Matt Taibbi. And Blumenthal just did a thing about this guy that Tulsi appointed to DNI to be like the deputy DNI guy. Max Blumenthal knows him. He's like, I know that guy. His name's like Danny something. And Tulsi appointed him to a DNI position, and Israel was like, ADL came out against this guy. So even just a tiny little thing like that gives me hope with someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who, despite her kind of playing the game when it comes to Israel and saying the right thing for the Zionists, I feel like her overall, principle of anti-war and her experience on the front lines will trump the influence of, the Israel lobby. But that's my hope anyway.
Yeah, but she even turned did a 180 on a lot of the foreign policy. The only thing she remained, and she did kind of did a little pulling back on things like Russia, Ukraine during the hearings, of course.
Sure.
But just as I said, just seeing her do pretty much a 180. But what's happened is that it's like the Democrats and Republicans kind of exchanged their people. Democrats gave the Republicans Tulsi Gabbard, and the Republicans gave the Democrats Liz Cheney, which Liz Cheney is 100 times worse. I got zero tolerance for anything with the name Cheney attached to it.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's just right down low.
That to me too, like when Liz Cheney started campaigning with Kamala Harris, that was the point where I was like, there is absolutely no way in hell I would vote for the Democrats this cycle. When they started doing that, and John Bolton I remember the Cheneys, man, they came out so hard for Kamala Harris that it like really astonished me. And Trump actually ran billboards, ran ads in Michigan and some of those swing states with Kamala and the Cheneys together. And the Democrats want to sit there and go, oh, we lost because we went too far left. No, that's never you guys say that every time. And as you go further and further right every time. That's never
exactly.
the answer. Just
Yeah,
say
yeah. You
oh,
know, Brianna Joy Gray basically, I think it was on Katie Halper. She said this on Katie, I think it was Katie Halper, that about how, you know, Kamala Harris, you know, just, you know, basically rejected having Bernie Sanders, you know, aggressively campaign for her, but she sat around bumping fists with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, you know, and
and
you know,
now they're going to put Bernie Sanders out as the voice of the Democratic Party.
yeah,
Now,
we're all Bernie bros now. I
yeah,
mean, and that's the thing right there. That's basically what we're talking about. I mean,
yeah,
now you know, with the, because we're going to talk about Kashama Sawant and her worker strike back conference, but regarding Bernie, basically, Ron Falcone was right what he said about the worker strike back conference and the Bernie anti-oligarchy tour that he's been on. Uh, I agree. I agree with his take that you don't necessarily have to agree with the sheep herding that is likely taking place with the anti-oligarchy tour, but the fact that he's reaching out and motivating the unions to try to get busy, I do think that part of Bernie's sincere in that regard. So that's a net positive. But so is the worker strike back conference. And
yeah,
Sabby Sabas was right about how it's too coincidental. It went on around the same time. You know, it was
totally.
like
That's
it
a
was
good
going
point.
on around the same time when I think that Bernie should have Bernie should have contacted Kamshama Sawant and done it in a way which is nonpartisan. And and I would have been 100% happy with that.
I just think too, though, it's like too little, too late. You know, it's like
Too
we
little, too
tried.
late.
Yeah, we tried to reform the Democratic Party, and you guys stomped us every time. And now that you took this massive L, you're gonna, because honestly, though, it's like the Lawrence O'Donnell clip that Jimmy Dore used to always play. You know, if you want the party that's closest to you to come closer to your views, you must show them you're capable of not voting for them. So I do think this election cycle was a good first step. But the next step is what Russ and Keaton and Shama Swant and all those guys are involved in with the workers' strike back. That is real organizing outside the Democratic Party. And that, more than anything, is what needs to happen if you want to have some kind of a, you know, a counterweight to what's going on now, you know?
Yeah.
Because the
I
Democrats
would
aren't
like
going to
to
do that.
share. Yeah, I would like to share a video, basically to start off with this. I guess you're familiar with Turncoat Don, right?
Yo, I love Turncoat Don, man.
Yeah. Well, here's a video that kind of surmise what we're talking about here for tonight. So let me go ahead and let me go ahead and whoops. Let me go ahead and get this started here, and we'll play it, and then we'll continue the discussion.
Oh God, this fucking never ends. Ah, fuck it all.
Well, third party.
Yes. I love his credits.
The state will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Yep. So that basically sums up the situation with Bernie Sanders in relation to the Democratic Party, and as I said, you know, to me, it is an utter failure to try to reform the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It is, I've argued for some kind of a formation of a Labor Party. I don't mean the Labor Party in the image of Keir Starmer today, but what it meant to be Labor decades ago, let's say in places like the UK. Something like that is needed in the United States. I will argue like the new Democratic Party of Canada will be probably the political party I look to kind of as a model that would probably do well here in the United States. But because I don't think it will, I think that at the best you can, maybe down the road you can get a progressive third party in there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens as far as if the Democratic Party in fact dies, because it looks like the Democratic Party is on borrowed times right now.
So I threw a link in the chat for you. You've probably seen this, but to me, it kind of sums up what this new Bernie oligarchy tour is about. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I can share it. You want me to share it?
Yeah, if you want it. It's Caitlin Johnstone who tweeted it.
Give me a second here.
Yeah, when I saw this clip, I went, okay, I mean, that's all I needed to see, really, as proof that Bernie Sanders' oligarchy tour is disingenuous, kind of sheep herding operation, because the Democrats, if anything, have just occupied that space where left should be. You know what I mean? For all these years, we have channeled. I mean, I did it for years. I volunteered, I put my energy, my money, everything into the Democratic Party, and just got more neoconservative shit dressed up in social justice language, basically.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll share it. Give me a second here.
Yeah,
and we'll get it set underway. All right. Let's see. I'll do one of these. And okay, give me 2 more seconds here. Where did I put it? Right there it is.
Hi, Bernie. Hi. Hey, we're really worried about Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia.
Okay,
will you do?
Excuse me.
Thank you. Will you put out a statement?
What did I just say? I've got to go to a rally now.
Excuse me.
We're just walking with you.
This is really, really dire. This is me.
It's urgent.
They're coming after this student.
It was they illegally kidnapped him.
Hi, Bernie.
there you go.
Yeah, I saw that. Not exactly Bernie at his best. Definitely not. I mean, he was pretty much an asshole there.
I mean, he sounds like a Democrat. The transformation is complete.
He knows it. He knows it. He's
because
frustrated.
remember when I remember when those Black Lives Matter women kind of took the podium, and Bernie let them talk, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're a wuss" or whatever. I was like, "No, that's awesome. That's what you should do."
Yeah. Well, I never thought that those two activists that took his microphone on stage, one of them was a Republican from years past, believe it or not. And because I think it was on her Facebook page, she wrote some pro Sarah Palin post or something like that. So I think that the two activists were hired by Hillary Clinton to basically put Bernie Sanders on the spot. But we're talking about 2015, 2016 Bernie, when we all used to believe in him and everything. Right. Yeah. So, and the thing about Bernie, and Bernie's terrible on issues like Gaza, and I'm gonna say basically it has a lot to do with the time. He's 82 years old, 83, something like that. Yeah. And he basically was, he's still an old Zionist. Maybe you can call him an old school liberal Zionist, but that's basically what he is. And he's never shook that off. in spite of what we have seen, what's been going on there. And he might want to be a good cop Zionist, but is there really such a thing today?
Not at this point.
Not at this point.
Not at this point.
Not at this point. So, I just don't. I just think that he's not quite. The times have changed, but some areas he's still living in the past in that regard, and that's problematic there and everything. But
and who's going to his rallies now too? I mean, none of the like Bernie left, like the real left, the progressives who supported Bernie in 2016 and 2020.
Post Bernie left.
Yeah, none of them are going to those rallies now.
Yeah, I mean
maybe a small percentage that's still clinging to some hope that he might actually be worth a shit. But
I remember going to a Bernie rally in 2019 in Chapel Hill, and I mean, it was kind of cool because I was talking to some old timers that were activists in the past. I talked to this one Trotskyist that used to be in the Socialist Workers Party, and so we were exchanging our past activism, because in the 70s and 80s he was in the Socialist Workers Party, and I said in the 1990s, early 2000, I was in the Socialist Party USA, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember those guys." And we were sitting there and we were talking about some of the just some of the stuff that what was like, because you're in these tiny little left-wing organizations, whether it's the PSL, whether it's the Socialist Party, whether it's the Socialist Workers Party, the ISO, the whole alphabet soup of the radical left throughout the United States. Everything is so fucking factional, and
it ruins it.
Yeah, you realize we can't have nice things, because COINTELPRO did a wonderful job of doing what they did. I don't know. Are you familiar with David McReynolds? You ever heard of him?
I don't think so. No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Do you remember? You remember the classic? I wish I had that photo with me on right now. Remember the 1965 famous photo of three men burning a draft card in Manhattan?
I've seen it. Yeah.
The tall guy. The tall guy is David McReynolds. David McReynolds in 1980 was the first gay man to run for president out of the closet gay man, and he was one of the leaders of the Socialist Party USA. And I remember him talking about how much disarray there is on the left, because he said when he joined the Socialist Party in 1951, what existed at that time? The Socialist Party of America, which is what DSA and the Socialist Party USA and all these, they are. It was the Socialist Party of America, the Social Democratic Federation, the Communist Party USA, the Socialist Labor Party, the Socialist Workers Party, the Independent Socialist League, the Industrial Workers of the World, and Jewish Labor Bund. That was, these organizations that were explicitly socialist, that was all there was. By the end of the 1960s and early 70s, there were like hundreds, if not thousands, of new groups being founded. And so today, you're hearing about some Marxist readers group where they discuss the works of their sole purpose is to discuss the Marx and Engels, and or you'll hear some Maoist organization here, a Trotskyist organization there, a Stalinist organization there, this new anarcho-syndicalist group here, and you're just kind of like, wow. It's kind of sometimes it's kind of overwhelming,
Yeah, it's almost like the left was intentionally balkanized.
Perfect wording. Yeah, pretty much. So, just kind of like, I don't know. And then there was some kind of a unity that hovered around 2016 with Bernie Sanders. And it was quite beautiful seeing this. I mean, this was at a time when even on the online left, I mean, everyone from a TYT, Jimmy Dore type. Well, he was with TYT at the time. Well, they were kind of, I think all the major players were with TYT, where you had, this is a time when Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore and Shank and Anna, all of them were on the same page. Kyle, David Packman, and I think he was with Media Matters at the time. Max Blumenthal, they were all on the same page. Bernie, and then everybody's done.
It was all herded into the Democratic Party.
But it was. Go ahead.
Incredible. No, go. Sorry, I didn't mean it. Go ahead.
No, it was wonderful seeing some kind of semblance of left unity taking place. I mean, just people who are out there, not online, but just doing their thing, doing their activism. A lot of them were just kind of like, no, yeah, Bernie. Everything was coalescing around us, and socialism, for me, democratic socialism or socialism was having a national conversation. People were having a conversation about healthcare for all. It wasn't considered a lunatic idea anymore to have Medicare for all, single payer. The welfare states that exist in places like Sweden was not considered, crazy.
Another thing that gives me hope, I have to say too, is you listen to people who are considered, influential in right-wing circles like Joe Rogan or Tim Dillon. They're for public health care. And Theo Vaughn is another great example. Theo Vaughn, I think, is underrated as someone who, he definitely has the aesthetic of like a country boy, kind of right-wing type of guy. But if you listen to him talk, he's very socially progressive.
Well, I know. I don't consider Tim Dillon right-wing, though.
I mean, some people do, but yeah, I don't either. But like him and Joe Rogan had, I believe I played this on my stream a couple weeks ago, but they had this conversation about immigration. And the point they made, I thought, was pretty good, where Tim Dillon said something to the effect of, look, we kind of recognize now that there is a certain level of societal, structure that we need to have. Like, we need to take care of each other. We need to have a baseline so people don't die if they get sick. But in order for us to provide that to everyone, we might have to, shore up the border to make sure that, we can afford to do it. By the same token, the whole, we can't afford that shit. Shut up. We dump so much money into these other countries. It's very clear to anyone with a functional brain that we can afford it regardless. But
on the question of the border, it just depends. The problem is, you have people that want to literally weaponize the border.
Sure.
A border in itself is just what it is, a border. But and nobody's saying that there should not be any arbitrary line or what have you. But the problem is the inhumane treatment of people who crosses the border. But honestly, more than anything else, it's the foreign policy of the United States that created the situation to begin with.
Totally.
Yeah, and I know you're aware of that. But
the other thing is, they want to take advantage of that cheap labor too. That's another part of it. That, like, my brother, for example, he lives in Mexico City right now, but he doesn't have a visa, so he has to fly back to the United States like every 90 days for a couple weeks to stay in Mexico. And I'm like, imagine if the reverse were true. I know hundreds of illegal immigrants who they don't have to do that, So it's like that like, I couldn't just pack up my shit tomorrow and go live in Spain without a visa. You know what I mean? And work illegally. I mean, I might be able to pull it off, but it's so, like, that side of it, I think, like, our borders are intentionally, like, that part of it, I think is real, that it's like, it's intentionally open, not for, the good of humanity, but because the lobbies that run our government benefit from the cheap labor.
Well, I'll tell you this. I love the president of Mexico, Claudia.
I do like her. Yeah.
I mean, she basically made Trump back down on these silly tariffs. And I'm a protectionist. Don't get me wrong. I do favor protectionism, but this jingoistic sort of, nationalist style protectionist policy just for the sake of it without actually thinking things through. That's what I felt like happened. I mean, like when he did these steel tariffs on China back in 2018 or what have you, it was there to protect Americans. It was a little more thought out back then, but it's like he's taking the hits that was in his favor from the first term, and he's being he's sort of behaving sort of like the Las Vegas era Elvis, basically, in terms of policy. That things that the response and his demeanor and his that's not the right way to put it. Some of the things he did in the first term, he's basically taking it and giving it in a really dysfunctional version of it, and thinking this 2.0 approach is going to work like it worked the first time around or something. And there's really, I don't feel like he's putting a lot of thought into it. That's just kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I think with the tariffs, I'm kind of on the fence with that, because I'm one of those people who lost my job. I had a good corporate job in 2022, and I couldn't get another one after. I still haven't been able to get another job like the one I had. So with the tariffs and stuff, like, just to give you an example, someone said something about the markets the other day, and I'm like, honestly, the market is just like rich people's feelings. Let's be honest. Like that's really what it is. And if there's going to be, I'm all for like trying new things, like let's like disrupt the current economic, situation. And I think the one thing about Trump, for all his faults, he's kind of uniquely equipped to be a disruptor in government, where, it's like we saw with Bernie Sanders, as soon as the knives came out, he backed down. But Trump has, the gall, the gumption and the ego and the resources to stand up to those knives. You know what I mean? Like whether it's legal stuff or whatever. So I think with the tariffs, it's like, what I see him doing is maybe experimenting a little bit, which to your point, but also I'm like, let's see how this falls down, because a change is good, and it might, the powers that be, the market forces are going to be pissed off about it. They're like, no, we've always done it this way. This is how we're going to do it. And, we're going to sow discontent if you try to change it. But I think, as the results start to come in, there's something to be said. Like you saw, for example, Apple came out and said, we're going to invest $500 billion in factories here in the US. So it does seem to some extent like it might be working, where if you start charging these companies for outsourcing their operations, they will bring them back because it's what makes sense. So I think with the tariffs, I'm a little on the fence about it. I don't think it's necessarily good, but I also don't necessarily think it's bad. I think that there's the powers that be are going to push back on any systemic change like that really hard. So it might take a year or so for us to feel, for the public to feel the good effects, if there are any, or the bad effects.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I guess that's all we can do right now, to see what happens, because right now anything that is considered the left is basically we don't know what the hell to do right now, because I mean even the Democrats, who are supposed to be vaguely representing a left position, they're not in the clutches of power right now. So Trump is in the driver's seat. So and
they deserve that loss of power. But I don't think they're playing it well either to win it back. But again, it's like, I think that probably the best thing that's happening right now is Thomas Sawant and the Workers Strike Back movement, because at the end of the day, the thing that the left needs to realize is fuck the Democratic Party. They are not going to help you. They've proven time and time again, they are an entity. They're a right-wing corporate party that's there to stomp you out. And so just investing any of your energy into anything the Democrats are doing is a waste of time. And I don't say that because I hate the Democrats, even though I do. I say that because of precedent. Like they've done it time and time again. I've experienced it,
I experienced it too from the early years when I was in college. Even my tiny Democratic Party crew on campus that I was a member of were DLC style New Democrats. They thought that Bill Clinton was a rock star back then.
Well, and think about this. Think about this too. Now, after delivering a massive L to the Democratic Party, the left has real leverage. Going into the next election cycle, if guys like Keaton and Russ and Nick from RBN and all these like real left organizations rally around and build up something like the Workers' Strike Back Party, that's a huge block going into a next election that can win policy concessions where they can say, look, Democrats, you do X, Y, or Z, or we're sitting out again. And so now I think giving Trump the reins for 4 years can only benefit the actual left.
Well, but let's hope that that we're not seeing a repeat of 20 years ago, because one of the most depressing elections of my life, two of the most depressing elections of my life was the 2002 midterms and the 2004 election with George W. Bush, because
John Kerry.
Democrats were supposed to win back a little bit in the midterms, because usually the opposing parties, if they don't take over the House and the Senate, they usually still gain some seats. And the Democrats lost seats in the 2002 midterm. And the Democrats continued to lose seats when Bush was reelected in 2004. And so, because people were believing weapons of mass destruction, that Saddam Hussein was in bed with Osama bin Laden, because most Americans are ignorant when it comes to Middle East policies and what have you. But the country was so far to the right. I felt like in 2004, with the whole Jesus camp sort of situation where, Trump is a cult of personality today, but people need to remember that there were kids in some church summer camp in Jesus camp where they were fondling a cardboard of George W. Bush, and this female pastor speaking in tongues were like, he needs our support and everything. And it was really creepy. You ever seen that?
I don't think so.
It's called Jesus.
I hated George Bush though.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I despise George W. Bush, but
well, let me just to interject. I think the dynamic that's different now versus then is like the thing about Trump that's such an aberration to the status quo is that they used to set the parameters, right? It was like, okay, you can choose between Bush, who will keep the war going, or Kerry, who will keep the war going. And the dynamic's different now. People don't listen to the media anymore. So I do think I totally understand your point about what happened with Kerry, but I also think that the media has lost the credibility that it had back then to put someone like Kerry over.
Well, I think that the media has long lost any credibility anyway. So I mean, I tell people to always go and find, like going to a doctor, getting a second opinion. You go and get your second opinion when it comes to your news sources. Get your 22nd opinion, as far as I'm concerned, because we know that what Fox News and CNN and MSNBC have to offer to us is pretty much just all of it slop. I mean,
I came from a marketing world too, man. And I mean, I think it's one of the reasons I was more skeptical of the COVID narrative than a lot of people is because I used to work in ad sales. So I got a chart every fiscal quarter that showed the ad pie and how much money was in the ad pie and where to get it. And the 75% of the ad pie was healthcare and pharmaceuticals. And so it's like, yeah, that all those outlets are controlled by those ad dollars, and that's the mainstream media landscape, really, right? Like it's controlled by corporate ad dollars.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that right now that people will, hope. I mean, since he's in there and there's nothing we can do about it, that that people will wake up, and I do hope that maybe even with Bernie, that he will also. I mean, I do think that he still believes in what he believes in, but I also believe that, in my opinion, I also believe he's been proposition into taking the path he's taken. And I think that basically, he doesn't want to be Hillary Clinton. I will put it that way. And
pretty tough to be that bad.
Yeah. I don't think he wants to suffer
the same
what happens to those that crosses Hillary Clinton's path to,
or Nader.
Yeah, well, a little worse than that. I'm talking about the conspiracy theory. So,
I got you.
Yeah. I don't want to get in trouble with this channel. But anyway, yeah.
Let me ask you this: is there anyone on the political landscape, in electoral politics, that you would consider maybe the heir to Bernie? Because it's like, people like AOC and
certainly not AOC.
Yeah, I mean those people have kind of exposed themselves too. So it's my thought process, especially for the Democrats electorally, is like, who do they have that's truly on the left?
I'm going to tell you, if John Fetterman did not turn into a Zionist asshole, and if he would have been the John Fetterman of 2022, where he was kind of running that a Bernie adjacent campaign before he basically just tossed everything he ever believed in and became Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
If he would have remained the lefty that he purported to be 3 or 4 years ago, he could have been possibly Bernie's successor. But no, he decided that he was going to be a corporate, just another corporate Democrat asshole. And so I don't see anybody right offhand that could be a successor right now.
What you just described there too, it got me thinking. It's one of the things I gave Tulsi kind of a pass on, because I got into it a little bit with Keaton on Twitter about Tulsi, and I just said, I don't disagree that Tulsi's changed her positions or she panders to the Zionist lobby, but they all do. Every single one of them on both parties. So I'll take that, to heart and be like, yeah, it sucks that she panders to that lobby. But aside from that, there's a lot of benefits to a person like her being in that role, a person who is accused of being a Russian spy, and a person who the establishment fought tooth and nail to keep out, And so I think that's where I'm at with Trump. It's like right now there's still a lot of hysteria. It's early, and the stuff that they're doing with Khalil to me is like, that's an instant red flag. I'm like, fuck you, Trump, for that. That's not free speech. You guys said you were free speech. That's the opposite
Trump
of free speech.
Yeah.
But it's early too. Things can change real quick. So, I still have this little grain of hope that like maybe the tide will turn a bit, because you do, like I said, hear these voices in MAGA that are very like, hey, what the hell? Even Daryl Cooper, who, gets smeared as a Nazi and stuff. If you actually listen to his work, it's pretty evident he's not.
But and Coulter basically thought that Mahmoud Khalil was done wrong too. And,
exactly.
And I can't stand Ann Coulter.
I can't either.
Yeah.
But, and MTG, I didn't realize someone like Matt Gaetz, for example, like that guy was smeared out of that role as AG because he never took money from AIPAC. You can say whatever.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, he was not. He took no money from AIPAC, and it's like
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, they threw all kinds of shit at him about sex crimes and whatever. And it's like, with that stuff, I kind of take it with a grain of salt, because you can throw that accusation at anyone on the left or right. Everybody is into sex in some form, and everyone's has moral, gray areas or whatever you want to say. But like with Gaetz, I saw that, like, if he was the AG right now, I think it would be a little bit different than the person that we got in there. But same thing with Tulsi. It's like I said, Tulsi just appointed that guy. His name's Danny something. I can't even remember the guy's name, but I just remember even Max Blumenthal was like, I know this guy. So the reason I bring this stuff up is it gives me just a tiny bit of hope that, maybe some of the tide will turn on some of this stuff. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
hopefully. I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say. Let's see. Do you who do you see as an heir apparent to Tulsi Gabbard? I mean, to Bernie Sanders. Sorry, to Bernie Sanders.
I mean, the only person, and that I could even think of is offhand is Shama Swant, and she's not in Congress. Isn't she like a state rep, or is she a rep, or is she like
former city councilwoman in Seattle?
Yeah.
And she would not be able to run for president legally in the United States because she wasn't born in the United States.
She wasn't born here. But that type of energy, like it's funny because, as much hate as people like Jimmy Dore have gotten over the years, he's been consistently correct. With like, I remember I was against him at first with the AOC stuff, because I was like, whoa, Jimmy, like, cut her some slack. Like, he's a little misogynist. And then, like, holy shit, he was right. And Misty, Sarcasm Stardust, Putin's buddy Misty, who's she's another one who just a Twitter face, that I know, but like has been consistently what's the word I use? Militantly skeptical of all this stuff. And it's like, that's what really you have to be.
Yeah, I love her stance on free speech. I mean, I actually met her at the Assange rally. Comrade Misty.
Yeah,
I met her at the at the march in DC, Assange march in October 22.
That was her cause. I was really happy.
Definitely.
Another thing that it's like, I was really I guess I was going to say happy, but like encouraged that Trump pardoned Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road guy. It's like, now do Snowden, now do Assange,
Well, I settle for Assange being a free man. I mean,
at least he's free, but still
fully pardoning him. But the fact, I'm grateful. In fact, that came out of fucking nowhere last year when that happened. I had to pinching myself to see, am I dreaming?
One of the very few things I will give the Biden administration credit for. It's like with Obama. Like Obama, there was so much stuff that Obama fumbled on, but he did pardon Chelsea Manning. So that, these guys, there's every once in a while they do something, broken clock, right? Like every once in a while they do something right.
Yeah. So freeing Julian Assange is one of them. And I would say, and even on the economy, the National Labor Relations Board did tilt in a direction that it has not tilted in decades, and that's gone right now. That Trump is not going to put ordinary attorneys in there, because that shit started with Reagan. Reagan started putting corporate attorneys in there, and Democrats and Republicans were doing the same thing over and over until Biden accidentally went back to the old ways of doing things. I think it was an accident, but
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see, because the thing is, Trump got a lot of votes from the working class people who want factories, working class work back in the United States. So to me, like, the NLRB is a negative thing that he was involved in, but let's see if some of the other stuff he does actually does help the working class, because if it doesn't, he's going to have a bunch of angry voters on his side. And the one thing I will give MAGA, man, they are they'll hold, a lot of them will hold politicians' feet to the fire. That's not all of them. You can tell some of them are influencers and they just go with the flow on whatever, power wants them to. But a lot of the working class people that voted for Trump, they vote. Do you remember in the first election, the Michael Moore thing, where he did that that thing where he talked about how he's like, I live in Michigan, and Trump came down here and stood in front of the fucking GM, the rundown, the closed down GM factories, and said, I'm going to put tariffs on these foreign cars, so it's going to cost them just as much money to make it somewhere else as it does here, and it's like that type of rhetoric, and it's a massive thing to do, and the pushback and the hysteria around any kind of change like that is going to be massive. So that's one thing where I'm kind of like, let's wait and see a little bit, but I'm very cynical as well. Trump is a rich guy, fucking, surrounded by rich people in his ear and Zionists. So we'll see if his better angels, deliver on some of the stuff that he promised.
Yeah, but he's a politician at the end of the day. So that's the thing right there.
But I agree with that, but also he's clearly not one of them, in the sense that they did so much to keep him out of there. You know what I mean? I can't believe that they would have gone to the lengths that they went to like get him out of the race if he wasn't some sort of threat on some level, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I hope I'm not, but I could be.
I actually remember watching, are you familiar with Jen Perlman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Jen.
I've
seen her on your show a couple times.
Yes. She's been on my show a few times. She and Peter had Keaton and Russell from Due Dissidence on their show, on their podcast, Generational Change. And Russell did turn out to, one of the few times he turned out to be wrong on something, but it was still funny what he said. He said something about, they will not allow that man back in the White House. And he said they will do whatever it takes. They will put a dead hooker in the hotel room with him. They will whack. Yeah. And I was just like, whoa.
I share that sentiment. I did not think it was going to happen. I was.
Yeah.
But my take too, leading up to the election, because I have a lot of, relatives who are very strong Democrats and were very upset. But I said, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out. And to me, if Trump wins, I'll see it as a good thing, because I'll know that the public kind of doesn't listen to the media anymore. So that's a good sign in the right direction. But also if Kamala wins, it'll be good for women to have a woman president. And, so I was kind of on the fence either way. But given the circumstances we have today, it's like we got to, like Rumsfeld said, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. So
my response to most people when the election happened, and it would have been about the same with Kamala Harris. I was neither upset nor gleeful about it, because I voted for what I wanted in 2024. In 2024, I voted for Jill Stein. As I said, and when I vote for somebody, I vote based on policy, not whether they have a chance of winning or not. And
that's how you should do it.
And that's how I think people should do these things, because
vote your
I
conscience.
know that voting for pragmatism, and my battery's running low here. Voting for pragmatism is not the answer, because I've seen it used over and over again for decades. Actually, if you hold on, I'll let you talk to the audience. I need to go and get my power cord right now.
Okay, cool. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree with Willy completely on a lot of this stuff. And I think, again, my take on a lot of this is wait and see, because I don't trust the hysteria that's being generated by the press. If there's legitimate evidence behind something, like the Khalil thing is the best. Here's what I will say, while Willy's fixing up his computer. I am very disappointed, because I was very excited when J.D. Vance gave that speech in Europe. And if you've seen the 60 Minutes thing with Germany, oh my God, they're like, they flat out asked these people, is it a crime to insult someone? And they're like, yes. Yeah, no, it's not. And so I'm really disappointed with the stuff that's going on with Khalil, because it's just, it flies in the face of all the great, kind of groundwork they laid for free speech administration. And it sucks. It's sad to see it.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. Well, I mean, free speech is a very important issue to me, and I mean, it's just one of those things I've always, to me, as far as the identity, what it means to be on the left, free speech was part of that package when I bargained for it decades ago. I mean, first radical group I've ever joined was the ACLU. They're not that radical anymore. In fact,
No.
I've been very disappointed with them in the last few years. But I mean, they still do relatively good work.
They still do some good stuff.
Yeah, but they did fall too much into we're going to do whatever it takes for whatever bullshit reason to be part of the resistance. Now, as far as the resistance is concerned, and I wish I had that clip. Are you familiar with Trailer Park Pundit?
Oh yeah.
Shanda yesterday on her show, she basically said that we resist Trump, but we're also not going to ally. I mean, I'm paraphrasing her. We're not going to ally ourselves with these resistance liberals because they don't have the solution either. We are the real resistance. People like us, and what I call the real left. That's the real resistance, not the pink pussy hat liberals, and I will never be caught dead wearing a MAGA red hat either. And the thing is, you can't actually oppose MAGA and the pink pussy hat resistance people and be consistent. And some people think you can't, but yes, you can.
Well, just to go back to the hysteria thing, right? It's like I got in this argument with my cousins during the election because they're like, we have to vote for the Democrats for abortion rights. And I'm like, are you kidding me? First of all, they didn't codify Roe v. Wade. But second of all, abortion is legal nationwide right now. And the conservative Supreme Court voted unanimously to uphold it. You can order in any state a mifepristone, which is an abortion drug, online, discreetly, just like you can order Viagra. And the court case that came in, I think it was April of last year, was actually conservative states challenging the company's right to sell those pills in their states, and they lost. The Supreme Court, even Kavanaugh, said, hey, look, if you're religiously not into that, you don't have to prescribe the pill, but your religious beliefs don't extend to stop them from selling it. So it's like that kind of stuff. There's like all this nuance that gets lost where it's like, and the Democrats are using, people that are misled or misinformed as a cudgel, and it's like, wait a minute, if you're voting on abortion rights, that's not a smart thing to vote on because you haven't lost your abortion rights,
Well, I will say this much about abortion. I don't think a lot changed when they overturned Roe versus Wade because they've been chipping away at Roe versus Wade for many years. I mean, and even prior, Roe versus Wade was just the court decision for 73 that was still officially standing on paper, but it really wasn't. It was really thinly veiled. The United States basically started to look like. We basically look like 1972 before Roe versus Wade was the law of the land, because by the early 70s, I mean, many states were already, doing, legalizing abortion and everything. Here's a little quiz for you. Do you know what was the first Southern state to legalize abortion?
Texas?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Oh, okay.
1968.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think my thing with the Democrats is this too. It's like, if they really believed what they say about abortion rights, they would have codified abortion rights. They don't really believe it. They know they can use it as a cultural issue to run on, which is why they didn't take actually like hard action on it, because they thought, oh, we'll be able to use this as, or like what they did with the Supreme Court justices, where it's like, oh, we want Hillary to appoint the next judge or whatever, so we're going to let RBG die in office and then Trump gets elected and is able to replace her. It's like, that's the kind of shit that pisses me off so much about the Democrats, that it's like they don't deserve my vote and haven't for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As far as the same-sex marriage is concerned, there's a danger that the Supreme Court could overturn it. But the one good thing about it is that the Respect for Marriage Act is the law of the land, which means that even if the Supreme Court overturns same-sex marriage, the states cannot ban it because it's a federal law.
It's a federal law.
They did one area with the Democrats, and actually I'm going to give some Republicans some credit for this, that pretty much the Democrats and a handful of moderate Republicans went along and decided to support the Respect for Marriage Act, and it became the law of the land. And I did not.
I mean, it was Clinton who did DOMA.
Exactly. I found out. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints and Mormons were in favor of the Respect for Marriage Act.
That's good, because I remember when I lived in California, the Mormons put up opposition. The Prop 8 thing back in the day.
Remember that. Yes.
Yeah, but I will say this too. Did you know Trump's which guy is it? He has an openly gay guy in his cabinet. Bessent. That Scott Bessent guy is gay, openly.
Okay. Oh, I mean, yeah. No, I don't. And I'll say this. And this is not me saying Trump is great or whatever. I'm not saying this, but I will say this mildly in Trump's defense, that the worst aspects of the anti-LGBTQ agenda that's coming from the Trump administration, the first time round and this time round, are not coming from him himself, but it's coming like the first time round, it was coming from Mike Pence. Mike Pence was the one that was doing all this bullshit against that community. And
Trump chose him to get the religious right vote back in that day. I do think too, if you look at the parties have changed a lot. I do think that the modern Republican Party, I don't know, even like my cousin who was like super MAGA, they're not anti-gay. They're like fine with it now. You know what I mean? I think a lot of that, because it's been so normalized, I think a lot of that old like bigotry is gone from the party. There are still the Tommy Tubervilles and the like old school religious writers in the Lindsey Graham who's probably secretly gay himself. It's all those guys.
Yeah. Well, Lindsey Graham, he ain't fooling anybody.
Right.
It's South Carolina's most well-known secret.
I remember, what was that guy's name? The Idaho guy who was like tapping the guy who got busted trying to get the gay.
I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Is Larry something, but it's like that's always been the character. Larry Craig. That's exactly it. But then you have great Republican thinkers like Andrew Sullivan, who are openly gay and have been for a long time. So I feel like there's a much larger openly gay demographic in the Republican Party now, and it's really the fringes that are anti-gay at this point.
Yeah, but and they do make a lot of noise.
It's true. They make the most noise. Those people always do. They always scream the loudest. The people with the small, this couldn't agree more.
Yeah. There's a weirdo that's on YouTube by the name of Wild Bill for America. You ever heard of him?
No.
That
sounds gay.
He lives in Daytona Beach, Florida. He's from Texas, but he lives in Daytona Beach, Florida. He's sort of like what's the name of that TV show with Chuck Norris back in the early 90s?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Shit, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Something Rangers.
Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, Walker, Texas Rangers. He's sort of like that guy and the weaselly, clean-shaven Ted Cruz combined, and goofier than both of them are.
Do you know Blair White? Have you seen Blair White?
Yeah, I know who she is.
Yeah, she's hot, trans woman. Right, MAGA trans woman.
Yeah,
I think it's a lot more accepted, and today. What Trump did too, I think, is a lot of the Republicans exodus to the Democratic side because they knew that's where the power was going to be. You know, that's why you have like what's it called, a Lincoln Project, and all those scummy consultant types like Rick Wilson and Steve Schmidt and all those neocon fundraiser guys are Democrats now. And Trump kind of swooped in and took the remnants of the Republican Party, like what was left, which was mostly like the libertarian Ron Paul, Rand Paul types, and then grew that base with a lot of people who probably didn't vote before. I think one of the reasons he probably won this last cycle is because he brought people out who didn't normally vote, you know, like, and he built coalitions. He went to the libertarians and said, hey, if you vote for me, I'll free Ross Ulbricht. And, you know,
well, I think that basically, the United States was at a unique point in history where, you know, someone comes along, you know, and you know, United States is kind of at a crossroads right now, you know, and so and unfortunately, all the problems that exist around Trump did not start with Trump.
Totally. Well, let me just add this too. Trump is the right's Bernie, really, because the point that Steve Bannon makes in that debate, I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it. It's really good. But he says populism is going to express itself one way or another on the left or the right. And the Democrats had the opportunity to harness that energy with the Bernie Sanders movement. And instead they went, no, we're going to appeal to, you know, the security state people and the like upper class Republican types that we want. And Chuck Schumer, I'm sure you've seen the clips, have said this. He's like, for every blue collar voter we lose, we'll gain 2 in the suburbs, you know.
I had made fun of him on this show so many times for that quote. Yeah, for every blue collar worker we lose, we're going to gain 4 suburban moderate Republicans. And my answer to that was, I'm glad they're moderate Republicans, but they're just going to make the Democratic Party
more right
wing. Yep. Let them do the fight inside the Republican Party to make them a little more moderate. That's what I will have to say. So I get tired when people push the Lincoln Project. I get so tired of that.
Midas Touch is another one. They're all Republican fundraisers that are Democrats now because of Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really. I have not seen much of Midas Touch.
They have. They're trying to compete with Rogan on the podcast circuit. They have a podcast now.
Oh, okay.
So they're like trying to build themselves as the left podcast. So
yeah, well, yeah, but you know, when Bill Maher said that there needs to be a Democratic Party Trump,
it was Bernie.
I totally get what he's saying, but his answer was John Fetterman. You know,
it was Bernie. They had their Trump. That's
basically what I'm saying. Yes.
The best quote ever, and I always say this is what kind of burst my bubble, is when I asked one of my super MAGA friends, I was like, look, dude, you're a coal miner. Trump shits on a golden toilet in a Manhattan penthouse. He's not looking out for you. And he goes, yeah, but he's not a Bush or a Clinton. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand. And that's that same energy was in the Democratic side. They're like, we don't want Hillary. We don't want, you know, Jeb Bush. We don't want any of these, like, you know, the typical status quo partisans that you always put up for us that are going to be the same either way. We're going to vote the opposite of that. And I that's really the reason behind the rise of Trump is it's just something different, you know, and he's uniquely positioned, I think, as a guy with a lot of wealth and a lot of public stature to fight back against the status quo in a way that Bernie was not, you know. Bernie's just like, oh, Putin is bad.
I was very sad to see him go that route and be such a hawk on Ukraine, referring to Bernie, because, you know, it's just kind of like, Bernie, you were also Russia-gated.
Yes.
Yeah, you were also Russia-gated, and I'm no fan of Putin. I want to make that clear. I'm not a Putin fan, but you know what? Russia, they got universal health care. We don't. You know, Russia got a 30-day paid vacation time guarantee to all workers, and it's national law. We don't.
I question on Putin. It's like I'm not like adorning Putin or anything, but I also question what I've been told about Putin over the years. Like the propaganda that we've been served up about Putin. I mean, Russia is not a communist country and hasn't been since like it dissolved, since the Soviet Union dissolved.
I think they're like the second or third largest party in Russia today, the Communist Party.
Yeah. So, and if you look at, it's like the people of Russia obviously don't hate Putin. Their quality of life seems decent from what I've seen. And I think that's another thing that, like China, the same thing. It's like we've been so propagandized to think that like, oh, socialism is the bane of existence. And it's like, bro, we have socialism here. Conservatives just want to pick and choose what they call socialism. I hate socialism unless the fire department's showing up at my house, or I need to take my kids to a public school.
Well, I mean, as I said, they got universal health care. They got a 30-day paid vacation time for all workers. The Duma has like 8 political parties in the Duma, as opposed to 2 political parties in the U.S. House and Senate here. There's no death penalty in Russia. So,
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. There's no death penalty in Russia. Now, as far as the LGBTQ community, the horrible treatment in Russia,
they're very religious.
Fuck Putin on that one all day long. But you know what? LGBTQ people are treated horribly in the Ukraine, and they're treated terribly throughout East. It's an Eastern European thing.
Yep.
You have to go to Estonia before everybody gets enlightened on that question.
Yeah, and I think that too. It's like a place like Russia. It's kind of like our best bet to influence them away from that archaic, like anti-gay shit is to be good friends with them and trade with them and have open communications with them. It's like this idea that like we can't talk to Putin because he's an authoritarian. We talk to Saudi Arabia. Like what? We talk to China. What the hell? Why can't we talk to Putin?
We talk to a lot of people. The United States supports 7 out of 10 dictatorships across the world.
Totally.
Yeah. So it just, and this was prior to Trump. This has just been a way of life for the U.S. since the end of the World War II. They have supported a lot of dictatorships throughout the world, and
we've set up a lot of dictatorships.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody's out of line, they're either politely disposed of, or they're disposed of, period. When I say politely, these people are still alive. They resign, or they've been forced out of office.
Yeah, just what's his name? Yanukovych in the Ukraine.
Yep. And I mean, and you look here in the Western Hemisphere, what the United States did to Salvador Allende in Chile, what they're doing today in Venezuela.
Romania. Have you seen, like, we literally just nixed Romania's election because they didn't like the candidate the people chose.
Are you familiar with Norman? I think is it Neil Kirk? Norman Kirk. I think it's Neil Kirk. Neil Kirk, I believe is his name. Are you familiar with former Prime Minister Neil Kirk of New Zealand?
No.
In 1974, he mysteriously died. His Labor government was a typical social democratic government. Did the things for the people that we like. A lot of these other countries that we cite all the time about. But he did not like the nuclear weapons testing in the South Pacific, and he was pretty damn loud about it. And he was mysteriously. A lot of people say he was poisoned, and a certain 3-letter agency in the United States that likes to cause trouble around the world might have been the reason why he might have been poisoned.
Yeah, I believe it. The thing that makes me the most upset about all this stuff too is that I do think the United States is a good country. I do think the people here are great, and I think that we could be a dominant force in the world by just being good people and letting it's like we're talking about all these communist countries, and the line in the US is like, oh, communism's bad, it never works, socialism never works. So why do we keep invading countries that elect their own leaders and thwarting them? If it doesn't work, it's going to fall apart by itself. But for some reason we have to go like you're saying with this New Zealand guy. It's like we have to get in the mix, and in Ukraine, in Romania, in whatever. Did you happen to watch? What do you think of Ian Carroll?
I'm not familiar with. I know who he is. I don't really follow him.
So on Rogan, and again, this is another thing that gives me hope, because I know that Trump and his people listen to Rogan and listen to Theo Von, but Ian Carroll on Rogan, he was talking about Guatemala and what we did in Guatemala, because the president of Guatemala wanted to give the oil rights back to the people and distribute them among the people. And so we overthrew that government and replaced them. We fucked up Guatemala. And that's one of the reasons there's a lot of Guatemalan migrants coming up here. But Ian Carroll was making a case for socialism to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was agreeing with him. Like, yeah, that seems like a good thing to do. So, he got unfairly smeared, I think, because he talked about the big no-no in the Middle East on Joe Rogan and expressed not anti-Semitic views, but, views critical of that particular state. And so instantly people are like, he's an op, Qatar's paying him or whatever. It's like, no, dude.
One thing about that certain state in the Middle East, the one optimistic thing here in the United States is that it used to be political suicide, just any pushback on the country.
Yep.
You were smeared as an anti-Semite, and it ended your political career, and you were just canceled beyond all measure decades ago. Even 10 years ago, it was kind of dangerous. Now, in spite of what happened to Mahmoud Khalil, it doesn't have the sting that it used to have.
No.
Yeah. And I make it clear. I make it clear that what Israel is doing is absolutely criminal and evil against the Palestinians. And I will criticize Israel all day long. The only thing I will not do is specifically blame an ethnicity / religion.
I mean, I've said this several times. The biggest pushback against that state is Jewish people.
Absolutely.
Jewish Voice for Peace was the biggest organizer for protests, the college protests. So I did a story on this a couple months ago, like back in 2024, because a lot of my conservative friends were like, oh, Soros is funding all these Palestinian protests. And I was like, okay, let's go into the weeds on this. No, Soros's NGO gives money out to a bunch of other NGOs, and it funnels down to groups like Jewish Voice for Peace. And what that news piece was about was saying, like, hey, NGOs, make sure you don't give money to these groups because they're funding protests. It had nothing to do with Soros. Soros didn't even know where the money was going. He just gives it to, you know what I mean? And so It's like, that's the kind of stuff where the conservatives need to wake the fuck up and stop being naive.
Thing about it is, I mean, you have a lot of Jewish voices that are opposed to what Israel's doing. Glenn Greenwald,
Katie Halper. Katie Halper had the best show with the girl who did the movie Israelism, or her name's, if not now, her Simone Zimmerman. Sorry to interrupt you, but
you're
Simone
fine.
Zimmerman, amazing, a Jewish woman who's been largely behind a lot of these pro-Palestinian protests or Gaza protests.
Yeah, well, as I said, you have Glenn Greenwald, you have Max Blumenthal, you have Aaron Matei, you have Katie Halper,
Due Dissidents.
You have the guys from Due Dissidents, Keaton and Russell. I mean, you have Noam Chomsky. I mean, you have quite a number of Jewish voices that they're like, this is not in our name.
If I had a hero in real life, it would be Max Blumenthal. Like, that guy is definitely one of my heroes. Like, always just like vocal about, like, his speech that he did at the UN about Ukraine, to me is like one of the best things I've ever heard.
Right. Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
the loudest voices against that project are Jewish.
Yeah, and
Not all, but a lot.
And we're talking about these people we mentioned, they're secular and left leaning, but there are even some ultra orthodox orders of Judaism that do not believe in the concept of a Zionist state.
Jimmy Dore played this clip of the IDF beating up Hasidic Jews. Have you seen that? I think I have it.
I've
saved
seen
somewhere.
it. Actually, I've seen
Yeah.
it.
There you go. I mean, it's
Yeah.
that I think too. And I'm, call me conspiracy theorist Joe or whatever. But like when I see people coming into the chat with like, oh, the Jews, I'm like, okay, you're an op, dude. Like, though I feel like a lot of that sentiment is geared to defame legitimate anti-war sentiment. I mean, it's been proven throughout history. They bring in these little bots. I've called people out in my comments who say the N-word or say some racial slur against Jewish people. Like, yo, what bot farm do you work for?
Yes, and that's the thing right there. I mean, as I said, this, I mean, and if there's anybody being legitimately, anti-Semitic, I don't want anything to do with them, in that regard, But this is about human rights, and some people get a little uneasy saying, don't compare them to the Nazis. Okay, all right. If they feel uncomfortable about that, then there are other genocides in history.
Also, if
King
they feel
Leopold of Belgium.
If they feel uncomfortable about that, maybe they should stop slaughtering women and children.
Yeah, you got King
starving people, turning off the power. I mean,
you got King Leopold of Belgium, who is responsible for how many millions of deaths in Congo. Yeah. You have the killing fields of Cambodia. I mean, there's
European settlers in the United States.
European settlers in the United States. The Armenian massacres in 1918 in Turkey. I mean, Armenia by the Ottoman Turks. I mean, we can, the genocide against the Yemenis by Saudi Arabia. There are all kinds of evil that exists in this world, other than the one that existed from the Third Reich. So
that's just the popular one that everyone knows. So it gets used the most.
So that's kind of where I stand on that. So no, it's not anti-Semitic to criticize Israel, and fuck anybody who wants to sit there and use the weaponized identity politics like that, like the heroes of the world and all.
I was just gonna say that this is where the MAGA talkers reveal themselves as fakes. The Ben Shapiro was the loudest voice against safe spaces for trans people or LGBTQ people, and now all of a sudden, like, we need safe spaces for Israeli supporters. It's like, dude,
exactly.
And he acts like he doesn't. The thing I hate that drives me the most insane about Shapiro too is he acts like he doesn't see that hypocrisy. He's clearly smart enough to recognize it, but he must be being paid very well to play that dumb.
I should play before we go. Actually, speaking of Ben Shapiro, we started off with Turncoat Don. Maybe we should conclude with Turncoat Don here.
I love that. Yeah.
Okay. Let me find that video because
that one I have seen.
It's good. Oh, you know what I'm going to show.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to be showing.
I was going to tell you too.
Actually,
man.
You know what? Let's go with Ben Shapiro.
We've been going almost 2 hours now. I was going to tell you too. I thought of you the other day because I did this bit during that Trump press conference with Zelensky. One of the reporters said something about fashion control, and so I saw that. Did you see? I made a dark wave band called.
Yeah, I loved it. I
was like, Willy's gonna love this.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
I found it. Hold on a second here. We'll go ahead and share that, and then we'll
sign
do
off.
the final words and all that good stuff. So
here's Ben Shapiro earning his money.
Yes. Here we go.
You know, we've been seeing these massive marches all over the United States in favor of Hamas. If that doesn't scare the hell out of Jews, I'm not sure exactly what will. These campuses, which are supposed places of safety and openness and diversity, well, when it comes to Jewish students feeling, just a little threatened by people who are now defending mass murder of Jews, and then, of course, there's nothing to be done. Are these people who are marching in favor of Hamas that you would want working for your company? On campuses across the nation, Jews have been surrounded. Jews are being threatened all over the world, but we got to make sure that the people who join the threats, those are the people who are protected. If they are not citizens and they support Hamas, they should be deported. These folks don't think like you. They don't think like you. In the United Kingdom, Jewish students are now afraid to go to class. I know. You are in your dorm and you're ensconced there and you feel so comfortable with all your friends who tell you that you're just a great person and all your beliefs are exactly right. The last thing you want is somebody invading your campus and saying things that you disagree with, because that's just tyrannical and awful. You shouldn't have to feel like you're wrong ever. You should always feel like you're right. Well, toughen up, sweetheart. Bottom line is that it's time for you to learn that there are lots of differing opinions. The discussion is good for you. It makes your views stronger. It makes your views more durable. It is that exchange of ideas that actually makes an intellectual community worth having. If you're not willing to engage in that intellectual community, you're in the wrong place. If you want a safe space, we can find a padded cell for you somewhere. If you want life to just be a giant teddy bear, go back to being a child. But if you want to be an adult in the United States of America, you're going to have to deal with the fact that there are people who disagree. And that's a good thing to discuss. There are only one group of people that want safe spaces so they never have to hear from anybody of a different ideology or political persuasion. Those people are called fascists. Okay, and you've got a bunch of fascists, damn fascists on this campus, who are trying to shut down political debate and trying to cloister themselves in this little cocoon of stupidity so they don't have to debate anyone or think about issues outside their kin so that they can feel comfortable. Guess what? Life isn't about feeling comfortable. Life is about bettering yourself. Get off your ass, you stupid pansies. You got knocked the fuck out, man.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
You gonna cry?
Yep, yeah. That sentiment, 100%, 100%. And just he had everything. He had everything he deserved. Obviously, so.
It's good. It's great that we have guys like Turncoat Don and Matt Orfala out there, because Jon Stewart used to do stuff like this, but he doesn't anymore.
Exactly. So let's see. You want to go ahead and pull a plug? Do a shout out about your channel, the time and everything for politics.
I've been all over the place, man. My channel's Politics with Rogimes. It's POLYTICKS. The meaning, of course, being poly equals many, ticks equals bloodsuckers. So that's the premise that I'm coming from. And that's pretty much it. I broadcast this to my YouTube channel too. So people on my channel should subscribe to Willy Bragg over here.
Thank you. Yes.
And man, thanks. These are good. I like just having these conversations, because when I prep for a show, it takes a lot of work, and I feel like I'm trying to put something together. But I think these are much better conversations where it's good to have kind of like some different viewpoints and like trade ideas and stuff, So I appreciate you having me on, Willy.
Yes, exactly. And we'll do this. We'll do this again, obviously. So and all of that. So and I would normally say hello to everybody on the chat lines, but we've been on here for close to 2 hours, and just as I said, I'll conclude by saying, when it comes to Bernie, I would say those who wants to follow Bernie, just do it with a grain of salt, basically. Do it, not with the intention that he's, of allowing yourself to get sheep herd back into the Democratic Party, but concentrate on the actual good that he is providing, with trying to get labor to be more organized and proactive, and trying to repair decades of damage that's been done to our economy with the declining unions and all of that. But there's more to there's definitely more to what Kashama wants doing with her workers' strike back conference that she had recently.
Just to add to that too, I would say with Bernie, I mean, it looks like there's people showing up to those rallies. You know, if there is, that's good. And I hope that he uses that energy and he channels it into something positive in the short term. Like rally those people to get Trump to, I don't know, follow through on his promise to eliminate taxes on tips or something that's going to help working people. You know, use that coalition you're building, Bernie, to do something positive right now, to lobby the Trump administration to do something good. Because at the end of the day, we all know what's going to happen. He's going to tell people to vote for the Democrat in 4 years.
Yeah, and that's something as I said, and I'm not here to tell people how to vote per se, because nobody has to agree with what I have to say on this show. I mean, whatever views are expressed on this show, as I said, it's not my final word on anything. It's my take, and people can sit there and listen to what I have to say, listen to what you have to say, and take from it what could be the best situation out of it. That's basically, that's
prove us wrong. I love being proven wrong. Show me why I'm wrong. If you got good evidence,
Same here. Yeah, and that's my point. People need to realize that as far as the situation is concerned, people take the information and do the best they can with the information being offered. That's basically it there. Let's see. I was going to say right now, if you want to stick around for a second after the show, I'll talk to you privately.
Sure.
And then I have to grab something to eat.
Yeah, of course. We've been on for 2 hours, man. I'm about ready to jump myself.
Yeah. So everyone, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment, share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to the Willy Bragg show here. Subscribe to politics, and basically, I would say free. At this point, I guess you could say free Mahmoud, free pardon Ed Snowden, and free Palestine, free healthcare for all, and for the preservation of our movement. Free speech absolutism must be preserved at all costs. So until next time, folks, I will see you all later. Take care.
Thanks, Willie. I like your theme song.